Some forests keep secrets that should never be discovered. Before we begin, if you're fascinated by these documented real mysteries, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Today I bring you 4 cases that occurred in forests across different parts of the world. These aren't urban legends. These are real events documented in official archives with government investigations and eyewitness testimonies. Cases that, decades later, remain completely unexplained. In July 2004, a 2-year-old boy disappeared in Yosemite National Park. When he was found 24 hours later, he was 12 miles away from where he vanished, in terrain so rough that experienced hikers would take 2 days to cross. The child's feet were completely clean, no scratches, no dirt, and he had no memory of how he got there. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. The child, whose name was withheld for privacy, disappeared from a family campsite while his parents were setting up their tent. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. A massive search involving over 200 volunteers began immediately. 24 hours later, searchers found the boys sitting on a rock 12 miles from the campsite, in an area that required crossing steep ravines and dense brush. Here's what Ranger John Doe, who found him, said. "When I found him, he was sitting on a rock looking at the sky, completely calm, not crying, not scared. His clothes were clean, his feet were clean. I've been a ranger for 20 years. I've seen lost children. They're always dirty, scratched, terrified. This boy looked like he'd been sitting in that spot for 5 minutes, not hiking through wilderness for a day. He had no shoes on. The terrain between the campsite and where we found him would shred an adult's feet. His feet didn't have a single scratch. When I asked him how he got there, he said, 'The bear man carried me.' He kept talking about a bear man who took care of him. Medical examination showed he was completely healthy. No dehydration, no injuries, no signs of trauma." This case is one of hundreds documented by David Paulides in his Missing 411 series. The patterns are disturbing. Children disappearing in national parks, found miles away in impossible locations, often with no memory or strange stories about being helped by animals or strange people. The National Park Service has no official explanation. Search and rescue teams are baffled. How does a 2-year-old cross 12 miles of rugged terrain in 24 hours? How are his feet clean? Who or what is the bear man? But Yosemite isn't the only place where people vanish under impossible circumstances. In fact, there's a valley in Canada where bodies have been found with their heads missing, and where 44 people have disappeared over the past century. Nahanni Valley in Canada's Northwest Territories is known by locals as Headless Valley. Between 1908 and 2009, 44 people have disappeared or died there under mysterious circumstances. At least 9 bodies were found decapitated with no trace of their heads. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. The valley is remote, accessible only by plane or by a dangerous river route. The indigenous Dene people have avoided the valley for centuries, calling it a cursed place inhabited by evil spirits. The most famous cases occurred in the early 1900s. The McLeod brothers disappeared in 1908. Their headless bodies were found a year later. Willie and Frank McLeod had gone to prospect for gold. When searches found their remains, both men had been decapitated. Their heads were never found. Their gold was missing, but their guns and supplies were untouched. In 1917, a Swiss prospector named Martin Jorgensen was found headless. In 1945, a miner was found in his sleeping bag, also decapitated. Here's what Martin Hartwell, a bush pilot who flew over the valley for decades, said. "I've flown over Nahanni hundreds of times. You feel it when you're there. The air is different. Animals behave strangely. I've seen bears running from the valley like they're terrified. Birds won't fly over certain areas. I picked up a prospector once who'd been there 2 weeks. He was white as a ghost, shaking. Said he heard screaming at night, inhuman screaming. Said something followed him for days, staying just out of sight. He never went back. Most people who go to Nahanni either don't come back or they come back changed. The indigenous people say there's a reason they avoid it. They say something lives in those valleys, something that doesn't want humans there. Theories range from wild animals to murderous hermits, but no theory explains the decapitations. No animal removes heads cleanly like that. No hermit could avoid detection for over a century in such a small area. The Canadian government has investigated multiple times. They've found no evidence of foul play beyond the bodies themselves. The valley remains largely unexplored, too dangerous and too remote for regular expeditions. If you're enjoying this, leave a like and tell me in the comments, do you know other unexplained real cases? I'd love to investigate them. And speaking of places where inexplicable things happen, there's a forest in Massachusetts that has documented evidence of satanic cults, animal mutilations, and sightings of creatures that shouldn't exist. The Freetown State Forest in Massachusetts has been called one of the most haunted locations in America. But it's not just ghost stories. This place has documented police reports, photographs, and witness testimonies that span decades. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. The forest covers over 5,000 acres and has a dark history. In the 1970s and 80s, multiple satanic cults used the forest for rituals. Police found altars, sacrificed animals, and evidence of cult activity throughout the woods. But the strangeness goes beyond cults. People report seeing a creature they call the Pukwudgie, a creature from Native American legend. But these aren't just stories. Dozens of people have reported seeing small humanoid figures in the forest. Here's what Police Chief Thomas Smith said. In my 30 years as a police officer in this area, I've taken more than 50 reports of unusual activity in those woods. We found mutilated animals in patterns that suggest ritual killings. We found evidence of cult activity, yes, but we've also had credible witnesses, police officers, park rangers, normal people report seeing things that don't fit any rational explanation. Small figures moving through the trees, glowing eyes, strange sounds. A state trooper reported being followed by something that walked on 2 legs but wasn't human. When he turned his spotlight on it, it vanished. These are trained observers, not thrill seekers. The forest has an abnormally high number of missing persons cases. Since 1978, 12 people have disappeared there. Most were never found. The few bodies that were discovered showed signs of violent death, but no perpetrator was ever caught. Hikers report feelings of being watched, GPS devices malfunction, phones lose signal in areas where coverage should be fine. Dogs refuse to enter certain sections of the forest. In 2001, a group of paranormal investigators set up cameras throughout the forest. Their footage showed lights moving between trees, shadows that moved against the wind, and what appears to be a small humanoid figure running across a clearing. The Massachusetts State Police have no official explanation for the phenomena. The forest remains open to the public, but locals avoid it, especially after dark. And to close out these disturbing forest cases, I must tell you about a woodland in England that holds the Guinness World Record for the most haunted forest in the world, and the recordings made there are absolutely chilling. Pluckley in Kent, England holds the Guinness World Record as the most haunted village in Britain, but it's the screaming woods on the outskirts that truly terrify people. Decades of recordings have captured screams coming from the woods with no source. There are things that can't be explained. What I experienced that night changed everything. The woods have a documented history of strange phenomena dating back to the 1800s. Historical records mention people avoiding the woods after dark due to terrible cries that emanate from within. Modern investigations with audio equipment have captured these screams. They're not animal sounds. Audio analysis shows they're human screams, but with frequency patterns that shouldn't be possible for human vocal cords. Here's what Robert Barrett, a paranormal investigator who studied the woods for 5 years, said. "I've investigated hundreds of supposedly haunted locations. Pluckley Woods is different. The screams are real and they're recorded regularly. We've done audio analysis. These are human-like screams, but the frequency and duration are physiologically impossible. A human can't scream like that without damaging their vocal cords. We've set up microphone arrays to triangulate the source. The screams seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. We've had experiences where team members hear screams from different directions simultaneously. The sound doesn't behave normally. It doesn't echo right. It doesn't fade with distance the way sound should." Multiple ghost hunting teams have captured footage of shadows moving through the trees. Thermal cameras show heat signatures that vanish when approached. Electronic voice phenomena recordings have captured whispered voices in languages that linguists can't identify. The most disturbing phenomena are the time slips. Multiple people report entering the woods, walking for what they think is 10 minutes, then emerging to find hours have passed. In 2015, a man entered the woods at 2 p.m. for a short walk. He emerged at 8 p.m. with no memory of the intervening 6 hours. Trees in certain areas of the woods grow in unnatural spiral patterns. Soil samples show no abnormalities that would explain this growth pattern. Compasses spin uselessly in these areas. Local authorities acknowledge that unusual phenomena occur in the woods, but offer no official explanation. The woods remain a popular destination for ghost hunters and paranormal investigators from around the world. If you made it this far, leave a comment telling me which case impacted you most. The child who crossed 12 miles, the headless bodies of Nahanni Valley, the cult forest of Massachusetts, or the screaming woods of England. And if you know someone who enjoys real mysteries, share the video. See you in the next one.